Hello there, welcome to the West London Sport YouTube channel, and I'm delighted today to be joined by QPR Chief Executive Lee Hoos, who's going to talk about what's been a very eventful and I guess in some ways dramatic season. What's your assessment, Lee? It's been a tough 18 months, but you must be delighted with the progress, but in some ways kind of glad the season's over.
Absolutely right on both counts. Yeah, it's you always want to see progression year on year, and I think we've taken some great steps forward in the last couple of years. We've got things under control at the club. Very manageable squad, very manageable payroll. But on the other hand, incredibly frustrating with not having fans in and really, for lack of a better word, ducking and diving to try to make ends meet and to keep things going in the right direction. And when you end the season like we did. Actually, you just can't wait to get back in the saddle again. Yeah. So on the one hand, mentally draining in terms of going through the last 18 months, but on the other hand, really excited and thinking, right, I can't really wait to get stuck in next year now.
Okay. And Mark Warburton, he's done a tremendous job in the 2 years he's been at the club. We all know he's on a kind of rolling contract, but has been any kind of discussions about perhaps extending the deal he's on, or are we gonna
no, both parties, very relaxed with each other. I think we all know where we stand. What would you do if let's say you made it a 2-year contract? You're actually in a worse position in 2 years' time when the contract's running out. So it just depends on what you want to do. So I think we need to look at the future without a shadow of a doubt. But in terms of the putting in some kind of a fixed term contract, if that's something that Mark feels more comfortable with and the shareholders feel more comfortable with, then that's something that me as a chief executive will certainly look at. But until that time, I think everybody is happy with where things are going. So long may it continue.
Would you say you've been at the club 5 years now? Is that right? 5, 6 years?
Seems longer to you, doesn't it?
Does this feel like kind of the best year? I mean, aside from the obvious, I mean, just in terms of on the field stuff, does it feel like the best year since you've been at the club in terms of the youth in the squad, etc.?
I think you're now starting to see the results of the investment in the academy, which is a huge plus. We've seen the players come through. So it's always nice when listen, fans always want you to they want a name they recognize. So when you're signing Ilias Chair a few years back or Ibira Eze, and they have no idea who that is. But it's only when they develop and get in there and become something and say, oh, he's something special, but he's developed right before your very own eyes. So it's hard to get excited about it though when you first sign somebody, because you don't know who they are, you don't know what they could become. And I think we're showing people this is what we can turn people into, this is what we can make players become. And I think that's opening a lot of eyes, and I think the fans actually are starting to enjoy that as well, saying, oh, well, we've always been about developing players anyway, so quite pleased that would to see the club get back to its original roots. But it's always about making that balance. So if you could bring we brought in Charlie and Stefan in terms of more senior players, that just adds to it and helps those players develop as well. You've seen people like young Chris Willock, who came here, had to reacclimatize himself from a Portuguese style of football to the English style, which is going to be a lot quicker and a lot more physical. And you've seen the second half of the season now he's developed and he's moved on. So yeah, really, really pleased with how things have gone. I think the last 2 recruitment windows have been 2 of the best windows I've had. And when I say I've had, I mean on behalf of the club, because I'm not the one who goes out and spots the players, but in terms of our recruiting team, done exceptionally well, and I think we've done really, really well bringing the players in that we have.
Okay. Also, I mean, in addition to the promising football on the field, there's the hugely important and exciting news about the acquisition of the training ground at the Concord Club in Heston. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of water on the bridge with Warren Farm, etc. I mean, to get that, I mean, that must be a huge relief to everyone involved in it.
Absolutely. And at the time, we had to make a decision because Ealing Council were fantastic with us and really helped us through with it. But we had, with the challenge that was coming regarding an environmental impact study and whether we should have done one or not. If we would have lost that, we then had to go back to the drawing board because the planning permission would have ran out. So, but on the other hand, the Heston is there and available for purchase, and you have to make a really tough decision. So, it was a very difficult discussion for me with the council at Ealing, but one that I thought, look, from a logic standpoint, I have to do this because I need the certainty of going forward. I know you've helped us, and you've all along the way. But if this fails at the final hurdle, I'm stuffed because my lease is going to run out with Imperial College, and I'm going to be without a training ground. So we had to go, and we had to make sure we had certainty going forward. Hindsight now, it looks like a genius move because with what happened was they did win that round, and they said, well, we do feel that we want to hear why there wasn't an environmental impact assessment done. So it's like dodged the bullet on that one, and now it's just trying to get implement the planning permission that we have there now.
Okay, financially, I mean, obviously the court battles, etc., etc. Did the club take a big hit financially?
We took some hit financially. You can imagine something that's been going on for. It started before I even joined the club, so we were, it's been going on for years and years and years. So obviously there would have been investment in there all along the way, but I think it's a combination of probably financial investment, but also emotional investment of trying to get something over the line and being frustrated at almost every turn. Touch wood, things look a lot better now. We've got Hounslow Council who've approved it. Just waiting to see what happens with the Secretary of State on that one. But fingers crossed that we should be able to get that one over the line fairly quickly.
Okay, once that's over the line, I know you mentioned maybe sort of 3 or 4 years ago that a potential bond scheme to help kind of fund the training grounds at Warren Farm. Is that kind of still in place for the new training ground? Is that something you still...
Yeah. I still plan on launching that because I have always liked that aspect of it. I did something like that when I was at Burnley, and I think it gave everybody a real sense of ownership of things, and also rewarded them a lot more than what they get in the current market as well. I know Norwich did a very, very similar thing, and I don't know. All I know is Norwich did it, then they got promoted. Burnley did it, they got promoted. So touch wood. Let's maybe that'll happen the same thing.
I mean, when are you kind of planning to kind of roll out details about that, or is that something that you can't do until?
I think we're just trying to dot some I's and cross some T's right now, so that should be done, fairly imminently.
I mean, from that bond scheme, is the plan to kind of use those funds all to pay for the training ground, or is it, private investment?
Well, the training ground's bought. It's paid for. The shareholders went out and funded the actual acquisition of the property cost. So bang, that's done. We've got all that. This would just be as a contribution because I know it's not going to cover the whole. We're never going to raise the entire amount we want to cover the entire construction cost, but a contribution towards that, I think, would help, and again gives the fans that sense of ownership in the training ground as well.
Okay, and what the fans get out of it? Is there kind of is it a dividend scheme? Is that what you mentioned?
Well, I think the way it's shaping up right now is there'll be a cash dividend paid every year. There'll be benefit in kinds, things like hospitality or something like that. That they, it's again that's being worked out right now. That'll be worth 3% of whatever the investment amount is. There'll be a kicker if we get promoted. That will be a big chunk that gets paid back if we got promoted. So just something for everybody in it, really.
Okay.
Oh, and the best part, what I really liked is something that's come available is it's ISA compliant. So, it's like, oh, great. I know where my ice is going this year.
And in terms of, it's going to be a Category 1 standard facility, but I mean...
No, it won't. No, Category 1, because for Category 1, you have to have dormitories and, the ability to house players. So we won't have anything like that. It'll be for a Cat 2 though, Category 2 club. It will suffice for Category 2. And for me right now, the difference between Category 1 and Category 2 really isn't worth the extra effort in trying to get it at the moment. So I think the most important thing is get it a good training ground. Category 2 gives us the competition we need to get meaningful games with our youth. But just as importantly, it's not just about the academy, it's about the first team as well. And training ground, ever since I've been in football, every manager's told me, given the choice between stadium and training ground, if you're going to make the investment, do it in the training ground, because that's where the players come in and hone their skills and evolve every single day. The stadium, they're only there, once every fortnight. So the training ground is a key piece of the puzzle for going forward for training and developing your players.
Potentially down the line, if say in 5-10 years there was a move to perhaps go Category 1? Is there scope there to space to build? What?
Yeah, in 5 or 10 years' time, that's something that can be looked at. But at the moment, I just don't think we just don't view it as necessary.
Okay. Just in terms of the support base of QPR, it's a very kind of rusted on fan base. Obviously they haven't been around, and everyone's missed going to the ground, and the players have missed it. Everyone connected with QPR has missed not having supporters there. But what have you been doing to kind of grow the fan base sort of over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, just to kind of build on what is already there and just kind of bring new people into the Kiyan Prince?
Well, growing the fan base during a pandemic is next to impossible, because the only thing you can do is show up by video. I think probably maintaining the fan base was more important, and maintaining the connection with the fan base was the most important thing over the last 18 months. We had a goal for the players to do 100 virtual appearances at the beginning of this season, and everybody thought that was a stretch, and I think it was 123 we ended up in the end. So really, really pleased with that, making sure that the players all buy into it, understand the community nature of the club and how important the fans in the local community are. And it's great that they're out there doing that and engaging with the local community. Manager's brilliant with that as well. He's with the phone calls that he makes, the virtual appearances he makes. So I think that's important. Look, for me, it's when you have the mass market penetration that someone like a Chelsea or Arsenal have, little Johnny might go to school and say, "Oh, I watched Arsenal on TV last night." But for me, the way we get through to our fans is a QPR fan can say, "Yeah, but I met the QPR player at this at my soccer school," or whatever it was that he happened to be doing that day. So I think it's about having a personal touch. Very, very important, making sure that people feel that connection with the club, and the source of much debate in the club, the family stand, has been a success. Our under 16 groups have been growing, and that's one of the big factors with that, in terms of making sure people can come, that they've got those facilities there, that we've got activities for them to do. We capture the kids' interest, because I think football is consumed a lot different by kids now than, say, when you were growing up, or if I would have been in England when I was growing up. How we looked at it. And today, with all the technology out there, with you'll have one eye on the phone checking out this, that, and the other thing, and one eye on the game, with a lot how the younger fans do it. It's just a very, very different way of doing it, and we know we've got competition, not just from other football clubs, but competition from other forms of entertainment and other ways of engaging with people.
But the playoff final in 2014, it's the biggest attendance ever for a playoff final between QPR and Derby. There's a lot of QPR fans out there that perhaps don't come anymore, or what plans have in place to try and get those who used to come that don't come as much to get back into the ground?
Let's be honest. The greatest marketing tool in the world is winning. And there's no doubt about it. There's an absolute correlation, even with our streaming figures this year. If you look at how many people engage in streaming when we went on a good run, it goes up. When we're not doing so well, the streaming figures are down. So there's no doubt about correlation, and you can. This is when you always have to balance. Of course, you want to go out and market to people. Of course, you want to go out and try to do what you can. But so often, I think you get people, particularly if you come from another culture where you're used to having, maybe you have a latent fan base that's out there that's huge. It's not quite the same as in England. It's a very mature football market. People, a very sophisticated football market as well. People are very attached to their teams. It's not like you're choosing a new washing machine and you can just market to somebody, or selling them a football team like a car. It's a religion, and it has to be approached like that. And so it's about reconnecting people with their football religion. And as I say, there's nothing better than reconnecting someone with their religion than winning.
Well, my wife, for example, no interest in football, but she was in the Westfield recently and said, but you'd never know that QPR were in the Shepherd's Bush and the surrounding areas unless you followed QPR or a football fan. Is there more you can do perhaps to kind of highlight that W12 is our manor, so to speak, and just make a more of a kind of, you go around Putney with Fulham, there's Fulham posters and signs, etc. Doesn't seem really to have that around the kind of the W12 area. Is that something
depends on how much money you want to spend on that? Right now, my preference would be to put it on the pitch. And again, it's like, if I'm, who am I marketing to on that? If as your wife said, she has no interest in football, it's like, okay, so QPR down there, does that then give you an interest in football? Probably not. So I, it's
But just to market in the name, getting it's QPR's territory, and you do not think that kind of says something about the club, and this is our area?
What kind of return would you think I get on that, I guess, is what I'd be saying.
Well, yeah, but I'm just in terms of like kind of growing what you already have, and making people like, oh,
Yep.
right, you're in London, you're the closest club
Yep.
to central London, getting more people to kind of just the Labour fans to come in and watch.
Well, that's my point about a mature football market in London. It's like, if I'm advertising, I'm not going to get a Chelsea fan to come to QPR just because I'm advertising it. I'm not going to get a Brentford fan or a Charlton fan to come to QPR because I'm advertising it in Westfield. It's about making that personal, emotional connection. We do some things at Westfield. We've actually done quite a few programs at Westfield with our community department in terms of putting on programs and things like that. But again, I inherited a very difficult financial situation because of financial fair play, and for me, the first thing to get right is the football on the pitch. If you can't get that right, you can market all you want, but if people are coming in and going, that was really horrible, wasn't it? Great example. When we played Rotherham, was it Rotherham? Burton Albion, sorry. When we played Burton Albion a few years ago, the NFL had their match in Wembley that weekend, and because of my connection with Baltimore, I managed to get us as an official event for the Baltimore Ravens, and we did a promotion. It's 10 quid entrance if you wear an NFL shirt, and we put them all in the lower school end. And I don't know if you remember the game. It was the most drab, dire 0-0 draw you could possibly imagine, and people just left in droves at halftime. I happened to run into somebody I went to the match the next day was between the Ravens and Jacksonville Jaguars. Got talking to somebody, and they found out I was QPR. He goes, "Oh, I went to that game yesterday." Man, yeah, that's the problem with soccer. So if you're not capturing them on the pitch and they're not buying into the excitement, all the marketing in the world doesn't do you any good. So you have to get your I hate to use marketing speak when it comes to football because it really offends football fans, but you have to get your product right first, and our product has to be right on the pitch. And that's where I think you're starting to see the benefits now, because I think our product is actually right on the pitch. Playing good football, playing flowing football, it's entertaining. Now, if I try and start to market and take off from there, I think I could probably get a lot more traction. So it's about establishing what's on the pitch first.
But now you have a young, vibrant, attacking side. Isn't there more reason to kind of market and
possibly first things first? Like I said, money first to make sure everything's right structurally on the pitch. Then once you have the right product, you got the bods coming in behind them. Then I think it's right. Okay, now we have a decent product, and we know we can sustain that decent product. Let's go out there and bring people in.
Okay. The stadium, it's been talked about. We can't say too much about it until we know more. But just in terms of what the fan experience at the Kiyan Prince Foundation as it stands at the minute, I mean, realistically, if Rangers are probably going to be there for another at least 10 years, you'd think. What's been doing to kind of improve, the fan experience of being at? I know obviously there's no fans there for the last 18 months, but there will be fans coming back hopefully at the start of next season. What plans could you have in place to kind of improve the kind of stadium experience?
Well, certainly in terms of the amenities, we're always looking to improve it, and I know sometimes I get jokes from fans about when it's mentioned at fans forums with things like, can we do stuff with the water pressure to make the loos work better? At the end of the day, what I can't do is make the concourses any wider. They are what they are, and they're crowded and they're a nightmare. And it's just almost impossible to work with. So there's very little I can do on that front. But just trying to make it as amenable as possible. If there's anything from the fan zone that we've implemented outside the stadium that we do up at the Play Football, that seems to have been getting traction the last couple of years, people stopping by there. So it's just trying to incorporate the whole area and as much of the surrounding area as we can into the experience as a whole. But the reality is, we with our caterers, I do feel sorry for them because I know they people will give them a hard time sometimes, but the reality is with the production kitchens they have, you know, I can't beat them over the head too much with things, because I know the facilities they're working with are very, very difficult to work with. And, you know, whenever we do run a catering contract, I always want to have at least 3 people competing for it. But, you know, the last one we did, you know, we had 5 people and 2 of them dropped out and said, we can't make this work. So, you know, it's difficult. I recognize the difficulties of working in that very, very confined space. So it's just really trying to make the best out of what we have.
What about something like keeping the bars open after the game? The lower loft bar.
To see the issue I have, you do this kind of stuff, but nobody stays. That's always, but you know, one of the issues I have. It's like, well, yeah, the problem is I do a lot of things that people suggest, but then nobody stays anyway. So it's kind of, what's the point in doing it?
But if you don't market it, why do people know about it? That's, you know what I mean? If you want to stay perhaps for a bit, stay for an hour after the game, have a beer in the lower loft bar, put some money back into the club.
Yeah, again, but most. You could try that. My problem is if I'm opening up there and people aren't turning up, because this is the problem. It's great when you can have a beer at the pub and talk about all things the club should do, and you have absolutely zero accountability for it. You can come up with all kinds of great ideas. The problem is, okay, we're going to stay open and you know, and for an extra hour. So we're paying all the stewards an extra hour to stay around. It's not like it doesn't come without some kind of a cost. So unless people are actually going to commit and actually stay, and the problem is sticking around after game, do that. Again, the concourses. If you're used to going to a pub after the match to see your mates, I think I got a difficult sell in trying to tell people, why don't you stay in the concourse, which is you know, a bit colder and a bit more unfriendly in the wintertime, on a concrete floor, and you know, enjoy the time with your mates there, especially when I know that, well, we're limited in what we can do anyway, because the concourses are only so wide, and, you know, particularly at you know, behind places like in South Africa Road. You know, Ellerslie is a bit different, but then again, that's exposed, so there's a downside on that. But at least it is a bit wider. The South Africa Road, really small concourse. The upper concourse in particular is like, you know, trying to get through that thing at halftime is a nightmare. But you know, if I knew there was demand, if I had enough people who made a commitment to say, yeah, we'll do it, or even not necessarily if you're even a fan in that has a seat in South Africa Road, but if you said the Blue and White Bar, or well, Blue and White Bar is a bad example because people do stay after the match and they do have a drink. But say, come South Africa Road, open it up afterwards for everybody to have a drink. Even if you were in, let's say, Ellerslie, to come over and have a drink in South Africa Road, I would try it. But it would, you know, I'd have to know that I was going to get enough people there.
Okay, and the lower lofts, obviously, there's been a lot talked about that with, you know, the family stand, etc., and it has been a success, as you say. Is there a safe standing? Is something that's been, I think Man City and Man United have both announced plans to trial it next year. Loftus Road seems the perfect kind of stadium to kind of have something like that. Maybe in the lower loft, the middle part of the lower loft, and keep the family stands at the left and the right. Is that something that safe standing? Is that something perhaps we could?
Safe standing is absolutely something I want to look at. I love the idea of safe standing, but it's one of those things what I'm not going to do is go kicking a bunch of people out and saying, this is what we're doing here, you go somewhere else. You know, when people are back in the stadium and we can actually talk to them and actually do the full consultation, is absolutely something I want to talk to them about, because I think I absolutely agree with you on that one.
And is that a way, as well as kind of increasing, you know, the capacity by 2,000 maybe? Is that
it won't increase the capacity at all. It'll still be the same. Yeah, safe standing doesn't appreciate it because you still have to have a designated seat for every person that stands. So it's zero effect. You would get as many people standing as you would sitting.
Okay, because I mean, in terms of having that behind the goal, with the optics, sometimes the lower loft looks completely empty midweek. Goals are shown on TV. It looks like there's no one in the ground.
Yeah, I know, but you know, someone's brought that up in the past. So I asked, could I see the midweek games before there was a family stand? I looked at it and went, there's no flipping difference. The midweek games before it was a family stand, it looked empty. So, you know, maybe if you went back 20 or 30 years, it might be different. But I can tell you, you know, 10 years ago, it was the same thing. This is again all about perception. It's about, oh, ever since it was a family stand, you know, midweek it's empty. It was like, no, guess what? I've looked at it. It was still empty in midweek games in you know, in 2009, 2010.
But then you look at games where it wasn't. In sort of 10 years ago, there are plenty of footage out there of the lower loft being packed, and
Yeah, that'd be something. The further back you go, the easier it is to find it. But you know, I'm saying I wanted a relevant sample, and the sample I got what showed me that there's not a lot of difference, you know, 10 years ago to versus now in terms of comparison of family stand to non-family stand for people behind that goal. But nevertheless, I still think standings is something I want to look at, because if it you know, if you could congregate people there who are like-minded and want to be there, then great stuff.
But do you think as well, I mean, the idea of safe standing, you've got, I mean, football's expensive at the best of times, regardless of who you watch. That kind of 18 to 24 demographic, that young adults growing into first, it's still quite expensive to buy a ticket. Perhaps the safe standing would be and make it more affordable, if you like, to get.
Well, I don't think standing will be any cheaper than seating, because you know, you'd be saying is, all right, we want you to tear out the seats, we want you to install safe standing areas, which is all costs. But what I'm not going to do is cannibalize my revenue stream, and also pay the cost. So if we do standing, you know, the costs aren't going to be a million miles away from where we are with the rest of the ground anyway.
But it would be discounted to. It wouldn't be as expensive, obviously, to sit as if you were sitting on the halfway line in the South Africa Road stands.
Not as South Africa Road, no, because the same thing. Even sitting, you know, the further away you get from the center of the pitch, the cheaper it is, and behind the goals in the corner, obviously, but is a different price prospect altogether.
Okay, but just in terms of that growing the fan base again, I mean, obviously, you know, trying to get Hammersmith and Fulham Council to kind of, you know, acquiesce with the move for the stadium, having more fans in the ground, would that kind of help the cause, do you think?
I don't think it would help with Hammersmith and Fulham Stadium. No, not necessarily.
You don't think that, you know, look, the argument we need the stadium because look, this ground isn't big enough for us.
Well, the ground isn't big enough because look, there's a case to be made. No matter, you know, when you build a new stadium, you look at Southampton, you look at Leicester, you look at pretty much, you know, very where there were grounds that weren't dissimilar sizes to where we are right now. But when you built a new stadium, you had a new stadium effect, you know, and people do go there because the biggest one thing we do now is we do look at first-time attendees at Loftus Road, you know, to see who's coming, are they coming back, and the retention rate actually is very good for coming back. And the number one reason people do give us for not coming back is not price or anything else. It's amenities. You know, it starts with particularly with ladies, lack of toilet facilities. Legroom is a huge issue with people right now. I think it goes back to what I said earlier about you know, trying to engage with the younger people, and probably goes to people full stop now, which is there's a lot of competition out here and a lot of things I can spend my money on. So if I go there, it has to be not just about good football. I want to be comfortable where I'm staying there.
So do you think safe standing offers
that? And my leg rubbing against the seat in front of me while I'm trying to watch.
But does that
safe standing could offer that? Yeah. I think that could be a viable alternative.
So that's something you're keen on looking at down the future. I mean, is it something that could happen potentially?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope before then. Yeah. No, as soon as we get people back, like I said, what I'm not going to do is say, hey, this is a good idea. I like that. Bang, we're going to do that. I think for me, it starts with fans, in particular the fans that when the ideas percolate, that it directly affects, and you need to take those views on board. So, you know, I think it's really important, not just about doing a survey online where a lot of people may or may not engage, is about the people who were there. When you get them there, okay, great. Now I got a chance to talk to you. You know, can you fill this out? Can you talk to me? Can you tell me what you think about this idea? And then I can take it from there. Because what I found is when you talk to fans, you actually get some really good ideas. So, you know, as one of the things I've really missed in the last year and a half is that actual engagement with people. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to getting people back.
Okay. I won't keep you too much longer. What's the situation with financial fair play, property sustainability? There seems to be some narrative out there that it's been relaxed for next season, which seems to me a little bit kind of, I'm not too sure whether that is the case. Can you throw some light on what the situation is?
Yeah, I don't think it's being relaxed for next season. There's not been any decision next season, but for this season and the previous season, I think it's combined the average of the two seasons. So effectively, you're getting almost a 2-for-1 type deal in terms of you doing your P&S calculation.
Okay, so the narrative of we can buy so and so next year because FFP it doesn't count, that's not true then?
No, I don't think there's been any decision made on next year. No, it's about this year and the year before where they're trying to make COVID allowances.
Okay, and then the stadium name, Kiyan Prince Foundation Stadium. What any sort of plans with that? Will it be continue with in the name of Kiyan for another year, or?
Yeah, that's something, you know, we'll sit down and we'll talk to Mark Prince about. You know, I think it's important that I get, you know, his views on things as well, because I feel sorry for Mark. It's you know, we did this, and then we went into half a year being, you know, we did it for one season. We said, well, let's do it for another season, then locked down for half the season. Then this season got absolutely nothing out of it. So no, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Not absolutely nothing. He's still gotten quite a bit of recognition. You know, and it's great to hear people talk about the Kiyan Prince Foundation Stadium, but in terms of getting people there and engaged, it's not been there, obviously, for because of the COVID situation.
Okay, and just lastly, season tickets for next season. Any news about when?
Yeah, we're trying to get up. Obviously, the government make an announcement on Monday, and hopefully, touch wood, everything looks like it's going in the right direction. You know, I still don't have clarification on how many people are going to be allowed back in the stadium. Hopefully, after tomorrow, you know, there'll be a divisional meeting with the EFL clubs, and hopefully I can get some further steer after that. But yeah, we would like to get something out sooner rather than later.